what we want to cover is prepositions and particles. And I typed, um, let's see, I've typed the same exact notes on that same note sheet as the adjectives and the adverbs.
Okay, so when I go to look for that, use that.
Yeah, I'll actually rename the document while I'm thinking about it. Here we go. So, prepositions. So, one of the things that we got to distinguish today is the difference between a preposition and a particle. That's the biggest thing we got to do with this chapter. This is one of the shorter chapters in the book, but it's actually a lot of content in here for this short
Right.
chapter. You guys have already started doing some work with prepositions because you had some preposition phrases showing up back in the noun chapter. Um, because the noun chapter asked you to identify what the object of the preposition is, right? So prepositions usually have several functions within a sentence. Some of these functions include um, accompaniment, means, direction, possession, and agent. If you look at the if you look on page 120, you have some example sentences here. He left with Bob. So with Bob, that's a prepositional phrase, right? With is a preposition. Then Bob's the object. You're going with Bob. You're accompanying Bob. She cut the rope with a knife. So means kind of means how, right? So she cut the rope how? With a knife. I walked into the room. That's direction, right? Where did you walk? Into the room. They hid the heirlooms of the family. So that's possession, right? So the heirlooms, who does the heirlooms belong to? Of the family. The mistake was made by you. That's what the you here is an agent. Who was the mistake made by? You. So I just kind of found a random list of prepositional phrases here. Uh, I don't think it's really that important to memorize a list of these. I don't think that's important at all. Um, I had a grade school teacher, an elementary school teacher, who once taught us this stuff, and she said, "What's a good way?" She taught us, "What's a good way to always know whether a word is a preposition or not?" And she said, "You can ask the question, where can a cat go?" And whatever phrase you can answer that with, the first word is always a preposition. So, where can a cat go? Aboard the ship. Where can a cat go? Um, Above the shelf. Where can a cat go? Across the river. Where can a cat go? After the mouse. Um, where can a cat go? Against the wind. Along the river. Among other cats. Behind the window. Below the window. Beneath the window. Beside the window. Um, Down the ramp. Um, from the litter box. So you kind of see what I'm saying here, right? You ask that question, where
That's
can,
pretty cool.
right?
I wish my teacher had done that for us and said they had us they had us do the rote memorization. So
Yeah, and I don't think there's any point in that, right? You can,
no, not if you knew that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's neat.
We have prepositions in our sentences all the time, right? This is such a part of language. If you Other languages like Latin have preposition phrases, but they have a whole case for it. If you remember, I told you guys with Latin's an inflected language, and the ablative case is actually how there, there's an ending on the word to indicate whether it's a preposition phrase or not in that language. We don't really have that distinction other than the word order of the sentence. Problem with prepositions is it kind of confuses everything with word order because preposition phrases can go anywhere in the sentence. Um, this is kind of where we got to figure out what are some of the rules regarding commas. So, if you have a preposition phrase that goes at the beginning of a sentence, so take for example, after going to the donut shop, the cop now had energy to give more tickets. Right? So if you put it at the beginning of the sentence that you're going to the donut shop, there's kind of like a pause there, right? If you're reading that out loud, that comma at the beginning kind of insinuates there's a pause. After going to the donut shop, cop now had energy to give more tickets. If you wrote that same sentence, but you flipped the preposition phrase to the end, the cop now had energy to give more tickets after going to the donut shop. Well, if you notice the way that I read it out loud, um, after going to the donut shop in the second one, I didn't pause. The cop now had energy to give more tickets after going to the donut shop. Versus the first sentence, after going to the donut shop, the cop now had energy to give more tickets. So you can kind of hear that like 1 second pause in the first sentence compared to the second sentence, um, which I did not pause at all. Whether or not you use a comma or not depends on where in the sentence the preposition is. So if it's at the beginning, this is a phrase, right? If it's at the beginning, put a comma. If it's at the end, you do not. A lot of people, a lot of students, when I grade their papers, they'll put a comma right there. And that's not necessary to put a comma right there if you word it that way. But if you word it this way, you need a comma. Probably one of the most common mistakes I see in writing is people who do not put the comma when the preposition goes first. So a lot of people would write it this way. That's wrong. You need that comma there to separate it, to separate the preposition phrase from the subject, the cop. It's an easy rule to remember, right? At the beginning, comma. At the end, no comma. Simple as that.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
And to be such a simple rule, it's one that perplexes students because I can't tell you how often I mark it. Students just don't know to put that comma right there. Um, there's some rules that I don't mind, and there's some rules that drive me crazy, and that one is frankly a rule that drives me crazy. I hate to see it. You can also put the phrase in the middle of the sentence. So the cop Well, I kind of got rid of the preposition after, but you can kind of see how I kind of moved that phrase to the middle of the sentence. So the cop, needing more energy to give tickets, went to the donut shop. So
Is there a comma after the cop?
yes,
Okay, that's
there's
what
a
I thought.
there's a comma after cop, and there's a comma after tickets.
Right. Yeah. There's going to be two of them in that one.
And the reason that's called an appositive whenever you have something like in the middle of a sentence and you have commas surrounding it. And the reason what an appositive is a phrase that you have in the middle of a sentence. It's just the only purpose of it is to give extra information to the reader. And you have commas around it because you can actually omit that, and the sentence will still make sense. So you can say the cop went to the donut shop. Well, that sentence makes sense. You don't need needing more energy to give tickets. That's just extra information that's kind of tacked on there. So, but that doesn't have anything to do with prepositions per se because we cut that after. But this is more or less a syntax lesson. Right? You might have a preposition phrase here. You might put the preposition phrase at the end, or you might cut the preposition and write it like this, in which case you would put it in the middle. There's lots of ways. So, but that's the rule. Again, the beginning of the sentence, comma, end of the sentence, no comma. Did he kind of put it in the middle? Maybe a better way to express prepositions would be this: the cop, after going to the donut shop, needed more energy to give tickets. Again, I kept the preposition phrase in this one because after is their preposition. How do we know after is a preposition? Where can a cat go after the ball? Right? So keeping it there, the cop needed more energy to give tickets. The fact that he went to the donut shop's just extra information there. So how do you feel about that, Amelia, after that brief mini lesson?
Sorry, I was trying to get to the unmute button. That's good. Easy way to explain commas and the prepositions. So, yeah, good.
Yeah, so everybody just remember, where can a cat go? Right? Whatever the first word is out of your mouth, that's the preposition. Right?
Makes it so much simpler. It does. I mean, I remember prepositions anyways. I don't know why, but they made a big deal about it whenever I was in elementary school. It's pounded in our heads, but I remember what most of them are. So
it's kind of crazy the stuff you remember. Like I remember that lesson from 7th grade, just like that, still to this day. It's kind of funny what sticks with you.
Yeah, and it's like prepositions are like directional for the most part. Not completely, but of isn't really a direction, but it's just most of them are directional. So I do remember that.
Yeah, direction, right? So
yeah.
You have accompaniment, agency, possession, and means as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one rule that I should probably mention is that it's in the traditional English. I'll type these notes on. Went to the next town over. So in the traditional English grammar, it's very much frowned upon to end a sentence with a preposition. Preposition always needs an object to go after it. So he went to the next town over. Maybe a way you would correct that would be over the river or something, right?
Yeah, I was thinking over the hill. Yeah, something like that. Over the mountain.
Over the hill, over the mountain, right? We'll say mountain. That sounds better.
Yeah, that one's good.
So this is one of these rules. Like you can ask yourself, don't we do this all the time in our common usage? Yes, we do. Whenever we write something, it is definitely common practice to never end a sentence with a preposition. And that's something that I mark a lot in my students work. Is lots of them like to end sentences with prepositions. You can always, we'll look at some practice problems in a second, but you can always rephrase a sentence, just like we just did with he went to the next town over the mountain. You can always rephrase to where you don't break that rule. Of course, the argument against that is, aren't you just adding more words and making your sentences more cluttered? Well, maybe so, right? But it's just one of those old rules that they came up with in the 18th century. You should never have a preposition in the sentence. And the reason for that is it goes back to Latin again, because in Latin, in the ablative case, you always have to have an object for your preposition. So, considering that the 18th century grammarians were trying to make English into Latin, that's why they made that rule. They were trying to bring the structure of Latin to English, I should say. You'll never find a more structured language than Latin. And that's probably why Latin is a dead language, right? Because it was so structured that there was almost no room for it to evolve. That's why the language is now dead. That's why no one speaks it anymore. The Latin speakers from Rome, right? They migrated all over Europe, and that's how you got the Romantic languages. People who moved, Latin speakers who moved close to Spain over a couple of hundred years, Latin turned into Spanish. The ones that went to France over a couple of hundred years, Latin turned to French. So those people like learn that with Latin you can't break the rules. So almost with like local traditions on breaking the rules, that's how these other new languages sprang up. I'll skip Oxford commas. That don't matter right now. We take a look in our book. The last concept to go over the prepositions is called particles. Okay. So whenever we're talking about particles, I'm just going to space this down. This doesn't matter right now. Whenever we talk about a particle, we have to ask ourselves, what's the difference between a preposition and a particle? Because particles actually are the same words as prepositions most of the time. And the difference comes down to how the word order of the sentence goes. So the book gives an example. Dorothy ran down the brick road. So that is a preposition. Okay. Down is the preposition. Again, how's the preposition? Where can the cat go? Down the street. Right. North down the preposition. So where does Dorothy run down? The brick road. If we So this is a case where that preposition needs an object. Right? If it's a preposition, it does. Here's a case where it's a particle. Dorothy turned down the invitation. So the difference between this and the one above is, if we were kind of diagramming this sentence, this one, down's the preposition, and then brick road's the object. If you kind of take a look at the grammar of this, Dorothy's the subject, turned is the verb, invitation's the direct object. But then we have this random word down, and we don't really have anything modifying down. So a way that we could reword this would be Dorothy turned the invitation down. You might think to yourself, well, aren't you breaking that rule which you just said above, right? You can't end a sentence with a preposition. Well, not necessarily, right? Because this isn't a preposition. This is a particle. It sounds good to your ear, right? Dorothy turned the invitation down. It probably sounds a little better to say Dorothy turned down the invitation. But if you rephrase it to Dorothy turned the invitation down, down's a particle. It's not part of the sentence in any way. It's just an extra particle that's added on. It's an extra fragment that has nothing to do with anything else in the sentence. There's no object to it. It's not modifying anything. It's just a particle. It's just there. So you should always be able to tell the difference between a preposition and a particle just based on whether how well you identified all the parts of the sentence. What's the subject? What's the verb? What's the direct object? Is that a preposition or a particle? You know it's a preposition if it has an object. In this case, down doesn't have any object. It's just an extra fragment. It's an extra particle. Amelia, I don't know if you have your book handy. You got your book handy?
Yes, I do.
Look on page 126. 126.
Okay.
So let's have you do some practice. So the question asks you, is the underlined word a preposition or particle?
All right, let me see.
Remember, if it's a preposition, it has an object. If it's a preposition, if it's a particle, it is not. But also, if it's a particle, you can move it to the end of the sentence, and the sentence will make sense.
Okay.
So try that first one. She looked over the contract.
Over, okay, you could say she looked the contract over. So
Mhm.
I would say it is a particle.
That's particle, right?
Right.
I
The
found it
next one.
over the
Yeah.
rainbow.
That one's going to be a preposition because you can't put over at the end of this one.
You sure about that?
I found it. I found the rainbow. Found it over the rainbow. Found it. I found the rainbow. I know. I can't find a way to do it. I mean, over was a particle on the first one. So you would think it would be on the second as well, but I can't think of a way to phrase it.
I found it the rainbow over.
I don't think that sounds good.
Right?
So, well, was I right? Is it in that case it's just a preposition, or
I think you're right. I'm just making you doubt yourself a little bit. You
I
you're right.
see. Okay,
It's a preposition.
that's funny. You're mean.
I know it.
Okay.
I know it.
All right. Let's see. I found they scurried down the street. That's they scurried the street. Yeah, that one's a preposition.
Right?
Prepositional
Down
phrase.
the street is the object, right?
The next one is a particle. He burned down the house. He burned the house down. So
Right.
that one's a particle. Turn in your assignment. That one's a particle as well. Because you
Turn
can
your
say turn.
assignment in.
Right. Sit in your seat. That one's a prepositional phrase.
Right. You can't say
You
sit your seat in.
right. She turned off the ignition. Off. That's a particle. Because you can say she turned the ignition off.
Right.
She turned off the beaten path. That's a prepositional phrase because you can't put off at the end of this one. It flew out the window. That one's a prepositional phrase. I put out the garbage. I put the garbage out. That one is a particle.
Good. You nailed it.
Yeah. Yay.
Yes, you picked that up pretty easy. So good.
Yeah.
Despite my trickery.
Yeah. Yeah, almost had me.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty simple chapter. That's the majority of it.
Mhm.
What's the differences? Let's take a look on page 129, Amelia. Let's do a couple more of these.
Okay. 129. All right.
So number 6 says perform particle movement on each of the following sentences. So take number 1.
Okay.
She
So
turned
you want
off ignition.
she turned the ignition off.
Right. Linda took out the trash.
Linda took the trash out.
The teacher brought in the books.
The teacher brought the books in.
Right. You got it. You got it.
Yeah.
The librarian looked up the address for me.
The librarian looked, well, let's see, for me. Okay. Wait, for me.
Up preposition. You want to look.
Okay, yeah, okay. There's 2 of them in here, right? Like the librarian looked the address up.
Right.
Lois put
on a new dress.
Lois put her new dress on.
Right. Arsonists burned down the building.
Arsonists burned the building down.
The children turned in their parents to the police.
Oh, that's mean. The children turned their parents in. Yeah.
You have another one there to the police, but that's
yeah.
a preposition, right?
Yeah.
Please hand in your homework.
Please hand your homework in.
They turned down our offer.
They turned our offer down.
Hand over your money.
Hand your money over.
All right, good. Nailed it.
The only ones that got me were the ones that had 2 prepositional phrases. So.
There's weirdly no questions about the commas at the beginning or end of the preposition. That was a me touch. There's actually nothing about that in this chapter, which kind of shocks me.
Yeah. That seems like it'd be kind of important to know.
You would think so.
I think it's something I realize anyway when I write, like just because you have to pause there. You're taught when you pause, you put a comma. So.
Right. I think a lot of people just think you should still pause if you put it at the end, but you shouldn't.
Okay.
So that's really what I had for today, Amelia. Next week we're going to kind of combine a bunch of chapters into one. So the chapters start getting shorter and shorter now.
Okay. So since they're not letting you do the Google Meets anymore, is it just you're recording videos that we watch, or?
Yeah, these classes that we're recording right now, that's what my featured classes will be watching.
Wow. Oh, wow. I'm so sorry for them. So sorry, guys, for my chaotic children.
That's all right. So next time's chapters 8 through 10. So chapter 8 is called negation. Chapter 9 is voice. Chapter 10 is discourse function.
So those are the next 3 for the next class.
Yeah, and then next Thursday we'll be combining sentences. 2 chapters on that. So
chapters 8 through 10 for next class.
Then 11 and 12 for next Thursday. And after that, we will be done with our review of grammar.
Wow.
Oh.
Chapters 8 through 10. Let me write that down. And then, so I guess the whole discussion post thing, that's going to be, everybody does that anyway now. Okay.
Well, so we have one more week of grammar review, and then we'll do the midterm week. And then the week after, starting March, we'll start with articles again.
Okay. Where we do the Pressy. Yeah. Chapters 8 through 10 for next class. Is there anything other than reading chapters 8 through 10 that you want done? Are you're just going to put it I'm sure there's a discussion, but. Yeah,
I showed you that discussion at the beginning of class, and then I'm going to put up some practice problems for everybody to do too.
Discussion and practice problems.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
And we'll see you next. Well, I won't get to see you because we're not doing that anymore. But yeah, until next time. Enjoy your weekend.